The digital art era is here. AI and art creation tools empower anyone to make it. Blockchain technologies allow anyone to own it. VR, AR, and extended reality immerse us in it. Let's talk to artists and innovators behind the visual magic. I'm your host, Roger Dickerman. Welcome to the future of art. Today, we welcome Jordan Lyall. Jordan has been prolific across crypto, art, and the generative art landscape, leveraging a strong product management background. He is founder and CEO of Venturepunk and is currently building Prohibition Art. Among the many other things Jordan has shipped are Meme, an early blend of DeFi and NFTs likely to make anyone smile who was around during its rise, Nifty's, an NFT platform, and Levels.art, an on-chain minigame platform. Let's get to it. Jordan Lyall, welcome to the future of art.
Hey, Roger. Thanks so much.
It's great to have you. I view you as someone who has their hands in so much. I think a lot of it is forward-leaning. A lot of it is where we're going. And I think you're someone who's at the head of it. So I can't wait to dig in. But let me just take a step back and float you the very broad question of what does art mean to you? Let's start there.
Tough question. For me, the feeling or the phrase that comes to mind when you ask that was like, so much, at least for me in my journey, is yet to be discovered, right? Like whether it's studying things that have gone before, artists and creations that are in the past, or things that haven't been yet to create, both my personal journey and then like things and community and products that I build is like discovering that. So it's just like a sense of like, there's gold in the ground and we got to dig it up. That's just kind of the vibe that I get. Coming at it from like a business and a product and a tech and design background, coming into fine art really for the first time in my career. I'm just amazed at the work and the talent and the creativity and the inspiration that I get just from talking with artists and studying artists. So it's really just like a creative unlock in my brain and in my life. And it's been an amazing few years.
What was the first artwork you encountered that changed your mind or opened your mind?
It's interesting. I did take an intro to art class in college. And I remember just like all the context around it that I didn't know. I mean, everyone's seen all the most famous paintings, right? The most famous statues and things. But it was the history side that made it so much more real. It was the knowing the context of who these people were that were creating art that stood out to me. This is interesting because, and you can apply that to a lot of different things. By knowing the context, you appreciate art, you appreciate the Beatles, not just because they're catchy tunes, but because no one was doing that before them, right? And although all the artists that they inspired after that, appreciate Tyler Hobbs, because it's amazing, but also because he's tapping into things that no one's ever thought of before. So I think when you appreciate things, not just in a vacuum, but you kind of pull out a little bit and you see the context, it's so much more interesting. So to answer your question, it's been a whole train of projects and collections and pieces. It was, we can get into more of my background and history, but even something like CryptoKitties was an unlock for me of like, wow, we could actually get art on the blockchain. Wow, we could actually do more than just send money to each other, right? And then it was the Chromie Squiggle and art blocks of like what it means to be like this long form generative art NFT that creates art that the collector really has a role to play, and that's generating that hash, which is then goes and creates the squiggle. Those are the ones that really stand out to me. And then it's like it's all about the context for me. And it's like, these are why there, there's a reason why these are so important. So I think importance has as much, in the historical significance has as much, if not more, kind of value in my head than just like the aesthetics.
Context is everything. You know, I believe that from a storytelling perspective, narrative perspective. So tell us your story then, fill in your context. So take us from that college course to Crypto Kitties, fill in that gray area.
Speaking of gray, this was a long time ago. But yeah, that was the only college course. I always had an interest in art. I've been to museums, I've been to the Louvre. I've had just kind of this passing interest. But it really wasn't until art met the blockchain that it really became a passion of mine. So when I left college with the business degree, always kind of at the intersection of tech and business and design. Early, stage startup guy, 0 to 1. I launched a number of companies, launched mobile apps. I'm background is in like product management. So really interested in like user experience and consumer mobile apps, and just creating an amazing experience. My first company was a Web2 startup that was acquired by JibJab. So digital media was always really important for me. And it was always really fun just creating an experience for the user, whether it's an app or a website, creating this magical experience of like making people smile when they open up your app. And that really was the passion for me. And because I have an interest in design, I feel like I have a pretty good eye for design. I never really call myself an artist. I'm a product guy that leans towards design and cares a lot about design, not only just the visuals, but the UX and the flow and the from beginning to end, from like the marketing and communication and messaging to actually using the product, to the experience and community of it all. So like a user encountering my work, which at the time was a mobile app, was really important to me. I fully vested at JibJab, finished working there, and I got into, was interested in Bitcoin. First bought Bitcoin in 2013, just a couple, and then just kind of kept my eye on it. Discovered Ethereum in 2016, 2017, started getting more into it as a product guy. Now we're talking something interesting to a product guy, where it's not just sending BTC around, but with the Ethereum smart contracts, you're able to actually create products. We can now build so many interesting things. We can now disrupt traditional finance infrastructure. We could actually do interesting things that require a product person and their brain on top of this tech. So that was really eye-opening of all the things we could build. So I was building some things on the side in 2017. And at the end of 2017, this thing called CryptoKitties launched, and that just blew me away. As I mentioned earlier, of like, wow, we can have assets, or we can have value stored on a blockchain that is more than just a few digits, right? A decimal number. Like, we can get some interesting assets on chain, and that unlocks collectibles, that unlocks art, that unlocks more products, that unlocks additional experiences. So in 2017, I was hooked. That was actually the impromptu for me to download MetaMask, was to collect these kitties. And it was the silliest thing in the world, right? So many people I would talk to, IRL, and they were just laughing. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I get it. It's really funny, but look through the silliness and see like what's underlying this stuff. And it's mind-blowing. It's inspirational. Imagine all the things we can build. And I was hooked, and I jumped in full time. So early 2018, I jumped in full time to the Ethereum ecosystem, worked for a startup that was doing decentralized exchanges called Total. And we're, you know, so kind of early days, this is 5 years ago, building interfaces that would allow someone to use a decentralized exchange without having to worry about order books and things like that. This was before Uniswap. And then, you know, time goes by, this concept of DeFi comes around, and you know, I kind of had a voice in the Twitter, the DeFi Twitter scene. And I started working at Consensus, was recruited over there, started building some DeFi products at Consensus. Always kind of like NFTs were in the back of my mind with CryptoKitties. I was aware of CryptoPunks. I was at a conference when the founders of Larva Labs were on stage talking about the punks. I acknowledged them, I respected them, but didn't mint or get involved as early as I would have liked. But it was kind of always in the back of my mind. It was collecting some work here and following along some offshoots and some people that were trying to do CryptoKitties, but trying to do something a little bit different. But it wasn't until 2020 where my interest in DeFi kind of overlapped with my interest of NFTs when I launched an early NFT platform called Meme, Don't Buy Meme. And this was summer of 2020, lifetime ago, pre-Art Blocks, pre-Top Shot. It was kind of on a whim where we started this community. This token was launched, and it was like, hey, let's build something to give this utility. And we built this platform that kind of was one of the first, if not the first, to really mix DeFi with NFTs in a significant way. And that's by staking a token, you could then earn points to redeem NFTs. And in doing that, it was like really my first time building something with NFTs. And it was such an amazing turning point for me, because it was like, okay, the blockchain is so much more than just building financial software, which was my professional experience, building financial tools and staking tools and financial regulatory or compliance stuff. And now it was like unlock this creative piece of getting to work with artists, collaborating with artists and collectors, and being kind of helping artists reach their audience and connect to their audience by way of NFTs and this fun collectible experience that we had at Meme. And that's really, I can't say enough how much of a turning point that was for me, of like, I can kind of merge my passion for the tech and the creativity of the art. And that's when I knew, like, this is now my life's work. It sounds cheesy, but everything that I've done since then, for the most part, has really been somewhere in the middle of like amazing tech, helping out artists, and appreciating great work.
Let's stay with Meme for a second, because that's your crossover from DeFi to art, or that's where those two dots come together for you.
Yeah.
There were some amazing moments on Meme that I remember to this day very, very clearly. It was a little too early in the DeFi journey. I was very aware of DeFi, was aware of the major coins. I just hadn't taken the DeFi rabbit hole. I hadn't jumped down the DeFi rabbit hole. I had a lot of friends who were staking on Meme and doing the thing. Ferocious was on Meme. Raf Grassetti was on Meme.
Mm-hmm.
Beeple T's being on Meme. How were you looking at that moment? How were you considering those artists as it was happening real time? Did you recognize the significance of it? Yeah, you tell that story in your own words.
Well, this whole space was so nascent. I mean, you said big names that were on or should have been on the platform. But it was so early, right? Like, Ferocious was relatively undiscovered. You could pick up a Ferocious work for several ETH at the time, one of one. And I felt like we were kind of doing our part in pushing this forward. When we look back at 2020, 2021, the bull market, 2022, everyone talks about how crazy 21 was, and it was insane. But I see the wave really starting, and it did for me in those meme days, and it just took a while for everyone to kind of catch up. I thought we were doing something interesting, and it was really mixing DeFi with NFTs, and that was really cool to me, where I got people in the DeFi space saying, "Wow, I knew about NFTs, but I didn't really get it. I didn't really appreciate it until your platform." So we had, you know, DeFi degens buying and collecting NFTs for the first time, and then on the flip side, we had artists and NFT collectors and people deep in that space that never really understood DeFi, and they were adding liquidity to Uniswap and LPing pools, and you know, it was really cool to really be at that intersection, and kind of put my impact on the space a little bit. But we knew some of these artists were going to be huge, and we you know, back then it didn't take much to just reach out to an artist and say, "Hey, we're doing something different over here. You want to experiment with us?" And so many great artists were down to do that. But it was clear that, like, some of these artists, you mentioned a couple, like they were going to be on to some big things.
How do you reconcile the end of meme? Because hearing you talk about it now, it's clear that it occupies a pretty amazing spot in your heart. It's a very critical moment in your journey. Obviously, your eyes were open long before with CryptoKitties, but it's when you really created something very, very special for both yourself and for a whole lot of other people. What was the decision to move on from that, sort of other horizons?
Yeah, it was really interesting. You know, the way meme started was really weird. Won't go into a ton of the detail, but you know, it, as it often does, it starts out as a literal meme on Twitter. For me, Twitter has been hugely important in my life, and you know, I posted a joke on Twitter. It got a lot of attention. I said, "Hey, you know, let's start a Telegram group so that we can laugh about this joke." And that just kind of took off. And someone said, "Hey, we should launch the meme token." And there was a, you know, airdrop to early members of this Telegram community. And it was really just kind of a silly project until it became kind of this potential shitcoin, this pump and dump thing that I wanted to step in and say, "Hey, no, this has got my name on it. I don't want it. I don't want to be involved in something that's just going to crash and people are going to lose money." So I just stepped up to get involved, got a team around me, and started building. So it was really this thing that happened backwards. Like, there was this meme, and then this token, and then this community, and then a product. And then we're like, "Oh wait, how do we make this into a thing that can sustain itself? How do we make this into a business?" So when every token was distributed, there was nothing to hold back for builders. There was nothing to incentivize builders. So in the early days, we took donations, we incentivized people with promises of future payments, and we were kind of struggling to find a way to how to make this long lasting. You know, looking back, I wish we would have done something different and tried to do it for real and legit. It was really struggling to kind of find an audience. The token was kind of doing its own thing. I don't know if you remember, but the token itself entered the top 100 tokens on CoinGecko. And at least for a moment in time, your members of, if you received the airdrop and you never sold anything on paper, if you had sold at the peak, you know, that's $1 million airdrop, which means that was hundreds of millions of dollars of market cap, which is just insane for this little funny, fun little project. So it was a hugely outstanding market cap. The team, there wasn't enough to kind of maintain a team and to incentivize developers. There was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of community strife, because this token, of course, kind of got up in the hype, and then it suddenly dropped. It was just kind of messy. So I, since then, you know, haven't launched an ERC20 token, just because you need to make sure incentives are aligned properly whenever you did that. And then we kind of parlayed that into nifties.com, which I kind of saw as like the spiritual successor. We do it the right way. It's an incorporate, it's a corporation. We have proper partnerships and a proper structure. Didn't really end up working out that way as like a successor to Meme. Kind of did its own thing. But that's how I was kind of telling the story. Looking back, it was like there was something special with Meme, and as you mentioned, it is something special in my life. Met so many friends, not only just amazing artists, but other builders, and so many cool people that can like look back at Meme and our work there and say that's what caused me to get into NFTs, or that's what caused me to go build my own thing. I advise several companies that say that very same thing of like, it was Meme that got me to go build, my platform or my community. So there are so many cool things that have come from that. So I think overall it's a really great story. But yeah, always kind of look back at those days fondly.
Still have Meme NFTs. I'm very, very fond of. Let's go.
Amazing.
So Nifties, I love that you jumped to that next. And Nifties, I mean, the big moment when Nifties launched was Space Jam. Talk about that a little bit.
It was fun. We this company was like the Avengers. We had 6 founders. Pro tip, don't ever have 6 founders. All amazing people, but when you get 6 brains in a room, it's hard to pull in any single direction. Everybody was amazing, but it was tricky. But it was like caught up in the bull run of the market. Oh, this is amazing. Everything we do is going to be successful. But it was great. It's like, let's use the tech on the Meme side. We partnered with a bunch of people kind of on the media side, worked with Jeff Marsilio, who had a decade of experience at the NBA, brought this legit kind of partnership and brand sense. Imagine your company's a few months old and your very first drop is like one of the biggest movies of the summer, right? Say what you will about the quality of the movie, but it was huge at the time for some people. So yeah, we launched our platform day one with a collection of Space Jam NFTs, and that was really fun. Looking back, it's kind of silly to then be talking about these cartoons and NFTs, and it was kind of hype being built on hype, but it was an amazing experience of like, it's literally a property. Warner Brothers is literally 100 years old. And this is like IP that's essential to so many people's childhood. And we're helping tell the story of, this property on the blockchain. So it was amazing just to be able to, we were doing silly meme pictures, and then the next moment, we're working with amazing artists and amazing properties. So that was super fun.
Stay on that for a second. By the way, let's continue our thread here. I have Space Jam NFTs.
Appreciate the support, man. You're always jumping in. That's great.
Of course, man. But stay on that concept of Warner Brothers for a second, because that relationship did feel very meaningful at the time. It was seen, heard, and felt that there was this big entity coming in with, like you said, whatever people will say about the movie, there's no doubt it was a blockbuster, right? And here they are in the NFT space with Nifties launching off. And I believe this is right, the year 2021.
Yeah.
Today, we record in 2023, right? 2 years-ish have passed since that moment. Cast your eye with lessons learned from that encounter in 2021, where we stand today, and what you think awaits us in the future. But what can you say about large entities like Warner Brothers, large entertainment entities, use cases on the blockchain, and spin it in your own words? Where's that piece of the future going?
Well, that's a really great topic for discussion. At the time, it was, hey, everything needs to be an NFT. The future of like shared storytelling is going to be an NFT. PFPs are going to be huge. But like, it unlocks so many cool opportunities to tell a story with your community. I give Warner Brothers a ton of credit because they were experimenting with this. They were doing things that their peers weren't doing. They were willing to take risks. The team that we were working with was pretty forward thinking. Of course, when it came down to it and the lawyers got involved, we had to kind of pare down some of the more forward thinking things. And there were some points where it was like, as a product guy, a little bit let down on some of the things we weren't able to do. But to their credit, they were in the game. They were experimenting in this new world. And then also to their credit, and we saw back in those days, there was a lot of cash grabs from brands and artists and celebrities and everyone. If your acquaintance was friends with an artist or a celebrity, then people were, it was this really weird time where whatever you could do to get somebody that has a notable name, slap their name on an NFT, and maybe you would get some luck and grab some cash. But we were trying to do something different, which is just like, this brand is built into people's brains, and they're going to be buying NFTs. They're going to be in this new, engagement, and we want to be right there. Looking back, I think we need to. I mean, it was everybody got involved in this hype cycle, and I think it's kind of good for the space to kind of trial and error, and then also look back and say, hey, this was kind of the whole market was kind of rocketing, and then now I think what I've seen, and we've seen less and less of these big brands in this space, but they're using those lessons of like, we need to be transparent and authentic. No cash grabs here. It's not another like licensing. It's not another merchandise play where now instead of selling DVDs or posters, they just happen to be digital. Like it's a completely different model. It's a completely different type of audience, and their expectations are way different than anybody else. So you're starting to see things with bigger brands, with Nike, with a lot of these other projects that are doing more things that are more ground level or more authentic's really the word, I think. Would love to continue to see the experimentation, like we saw ad nauseum. People just saw punks and apes and they wanted to do something like that. And it's looking like, for just a few of those projects, that format really doesn't really work for anybody else. Like we have to do something different, something that's right by your brand and for the Web3 space. So I'm still bullish on bigger brands and Web2 brands coming into this space and trying things in the right way. I love that others are doing that. That's not something I'm interested necessarily in doing. That's why a lot of my projects in the last year have been more ground level and more experimental in nature, around like creating products and communities for those of us in this space now. So that's kind of my takeaway from it. But at some point, there's going to be this lining up of like big brands and big companies are in it and are doing it for the right reason, and it aligns with the brand new users, and our tech aligns with that I think we're going to see another within the next year or two, another kind of wave of more experimentation, and a wave of more net new users into the space because of this combination of content and tech.
You mentioned it's not something that you're interested in right now, but if you were, and you had a major property, what's a way that property would come in that would not interest you in the level of you doing it, but that would raise your eyebrows to say, I like that. I think that's a really interesting, like, I guess go one step. You could even pick a specific property if you want, but go one step beyond authentic. And I'm curious as to a case study here.
Yeah, that's a good one. we're seeing it here in different examples. I'm trying to think of a good example here. You know, I when I think about brands that I like that are outside of the Web3 world, I so I'm a fan of Major League Baseball, big fan of the Dodgers. And one thing that they did, this was 5 years ago, back in 2018. So this was a lifetime ago. They issued a digital bobblehead, and this was in 2018. Imagine that. Nobody knew what NFTs were besides, you know, a few of us. And anyone that went to the stadium on a particular day got a code. You scratch it off, and you can go claim an NFT, digital bobblehead. It was forward thinking because no one else was doing it. This is years before Top Shot, years before Open, you know, any of these other brands even attempted to do it. And because they were doing something new and novel, I just loved every minute of it, and I collected a bunch. It then, you know, because it wasn't on chain, it was pointing to an AWS server. It got shut down, and the assets were gone. They're since back, but that was an interesting experience of, like, as a collector, now my NFTs are gone, and it brought up all these thoughts around, like, why things should be on chain and why things should be decentralized. But I thought they were doing something authentic, and something that, like, everybody gave them crap for it. All their fans thought it was stupid, but they were doing something. They were kind of going. They were a couple of years in advance. I think more and more people should be trying some of these things, whether or not they think their audience is ready for it. You know, so many, you know, Nifties, we were guilty of doing this. So many projects do this, and they try to water it down. You know, you hear Web 2.5, where it's like, we're going to dip our toes in this decentralized Web3 space, but we're still going to make this experience ready for Web 2. And so many people aren't willing to just jump in. So many groups aren't willing to just jump in, and they want to just dip a toe, and then they react when their community or their, you know, they get ratioed on Twitter by people who just don't get it. And they, I love the groups that are willing to experiment and go all in, and take shots, take risks. And it's engaging. You know, by authentic, I mean spending time in the space, working with partners and brands and people that are deep in this space, and really deliver for the user, and just be ready to, yeah, meet the user where they're at. And right now, it's a tricky time because we're in the lows of a bear market, but you know, the cliche is that, you know, now's the time to build and experiment. So I just love that blatant experiment, because crypto in general is one big experiment, right? Like, it's grown over the last decade, of course, and it's, you know, billions and trillions of dollars market cap, but this is one giant experiment that you know, that like it or not, we're just kind of figuring things out as we go. So I think that mindset of like, we don't know what this will do, we don't know what numbers will hit, but we're going to put meaningful resources behind these fun experiments.
I like that idea of going all in, because if you don't, it sort of jeopardizes what you're doing in the first place. Go back a whole step to CryptoKitties here, and this raises a question in my mind. So that's the moment that opened your eyes to say, okay, we can do more with this blockchain, right? That was your initial connection. Mm-hmm. How do you ascribe value to a blockchain? Meaning, putting that CryptoKitty or putting that art NFT on Ethereum versus other blockchains that we've seen. Tezos comes to mind, Solana comes to mind. We're seeing Bitcoin ordinals take off in their own right. How do you ascribe values to chains, and how do you think that matters as we push into the future?
Yeah, you know, as I mentioned, a few years before I got into Ethereum, I was into Bitcoin, and got burned trading altcoins. Unfortunately, back in the day of like 2014. So I was really turned off in general of like new chains. So at the time, for a brief moment, I was a Bitcoin maxi. But it was really several times of being hit over the head of things that I would read on Reddit or Hacker News or whatever it was around what Ethereum is, seeing it in Coinbase, keep seeing what's ETH, I got to look into it. And, you know, as mentioned, as a product guy, it opened my eyes to what could be built. And reading through the white paper, jumping in and doing as much research as I could, listening to podcasts, listening to Vitalik talk. It really just kind of solidified my interest in Ethereum, and it's been fairly unwavering ever since. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in other blockchains. I've just been so impressed with the Ethereum community, with builders in this space, with the conferences that I've go to. For me, early on, there was a clear difference of going to like a general crypto conference or general NFT conference and going to Ethereum specific conference. Like there, it's like, go back to the authenticity, go back to the vibes. It was after spending a couple hours at an NFT or at an Ethereum conference, it's like, these are my people. This is where I need to be. Lot fewer egos, a lot of experimentation and building and doing it for the right reason. Just made so many lifelong friends in this community. But I think Ethereum's kind of in a unique spot where better tech is going to come around. We're going to see some interesting things, and we have over the last few years with these other layer ones. But what Ethereum has is decentralization in general, and this massive head start of momentum. And it's kind of cliche, but it's, you know, it's the developers, it's the builders, it's the entrepreneurs, it's the capital, and it comes down to the vibe. I know it sounds silly, but I think that it's got so many things going for it that that's where I've decided to continue to kind of build. I still consider layer 2 and scaling solutions inside the Ethereum ecosystem to be Ethereum. So with some of the projects that I'm working on now, or we're working on, you know, layer 2 blockchains, but it's still part of the EVM. It's still part of the general ecosystem, still part of the same community. So that's where I find the most beneficial place to be building.
All right, let's pull it back to your stuff, right? We have some more horizons to get to. Please allow me to be selfish first, and then I'm going to let you take the mic and take it wherever you'd like to, and especially what you're currently working on right now, which is pretty exciting. But I want to go to levels first. I told you we had to go here. It was something that I saw hit, and it was with Brian Brinkman at I believe that was the first one, and it fascinated me. It just fascinated me. It was one of those things that, like, you put a smile on my face. It was, oh, this is a really interesting use case on this blockchain with an artist, with some gameplay, and you take it from there.
You're totally right. It's trying to take a step forward around, instead of just looking at NFTs, what if you could step into them? What if you could engage? And we've seen interactive NFTs, and you click and you drag and you do different things. But what if it's like a playable game? It's interesting because you can't get a lot of data on chain. That's just kind of how it's built. Each smart contract has just a little bit of space to put code. So it would have been impossible to do it, you know, on my own, but it was this coming together of a compression ninja that I worked with Cyber H49, who's another great builder and dev in this space. And he said, I've got this great idea. What if you could play a game on an NFT? And it's oftentimes that's where I get a lot of success comes from, where someone has this spark of something can be done technically. And then I would say, well, how does that look for the user? Or what's the experience for the user? and then productizing it, putting a wrapper and packaging around it, reaching out to my connections, reaching out to my community, reaching out to my team, and turning it into a product and a vision and a meme. And this one was perfect. And the thought was, what if your favorite NFT artist could create a video game that you could play? Oh, and it just happens to be the NFT itself as a game, everything's stored on chain, and there's only 100 of them, and it's generative, and they all look different, but they're all playable. And that was it. And Brian Brinkman is a friend, and I've been a collector of his for a couple of years, and I've always been wanting to build something with him. And he's very experimental. He's doing a bunch of really interesting things. Even to this day, is launching on new platforms and is really pushing things from the artist perspective. So that's certainly commendable. But this was just a fun thing that we had talked about for months and months and months. Wouldn't it be cool to get Brian Brinkman to design a game? And it works out that because there's such little space on the blockchain, it works well for these retro 8-bit games to be on the blockchain. So it was like all these retro games, like, hey, wouldn't it be great if Brian Brinkman could do asteroids? And it worked out for him, and we made it happen. It was really fun. It was months and months of brainstorming, a couple months of development, and it was really fun to launch the inaugural collection on levels.art was Cloud Poppers by Brian Brinkman. And yeah, it was just such a fun project. A lot of people resonated with it.
Nostalgic, interesting levels of like color-based rarities and all sorts of fun stuff in there. You know what just struck me? If I were to say who is the artist equivalent of Jordan Lyall, I would actually say Brian Brinkman.
Oh, that's an honor. I appreciate that. I could see that. I could see that.
The synapse is just fired and connected those two dots in my mind.
No, he's an amazing artist, and yeah, I've got a lot of his work, and we chat a lot. I appreciate that. That's great.
All right, your current passion, Prohibition. Shall we go there?
Let's do it, man. Yeah. Current passion is, in general, generative art. So it's like one step further from a lot of this other stuff that we've done. As mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it, but since CryptoKitties, I've been collecting myself, and launching Meme really got me into more editions-based stuff and one-of-one art. And I was around in the early days of art blocks, and I got to see the fun of minting that generative work, and the uniqueness of something being fully on chain by the transaction hash of me minting it, creating something completely new and original, and this concept of one of X, which is part of a collection, but it's entirely unique. And generative art existed pre-blockchain, but now it's kind of found almost like this killer app status in the blockchain, where it just makes total sense that now we're able to bring these two things together. Digital art is amazing, but when you marry it with the determinism of generative of blockchain, and not only just the marketing or the marketplace of this constant liquidity, and all these other benefits that we have for NFTs in general, I've just been in love with generative art. And from the early days of collecting Squiggles and Fidenza and all these other projects that I knew as a collector I love, and as a builder I would one day want to build for something in this space, being such a big fan of all the others that are building in this space, like Snowfro. And just kind of worked out where it's like, and now's the time I need to build something. I have Venturepunk, which is my product studio. We're seeing this kind of, in the quote unquote crash, and over the last year, a lot of NFTs decreased in value. But what's interesting is that these grails that have not only visual appeal, but this historical context, like we mentioned earlier, some of these generative art grails have, weren't really affected in the overall market downtrend, or if they were, it wasn't much. Some of that even increased in value. But it's these things like autoglyphs and chromie squiggles and fidenzas and ringers and some of these things that are considered true grails. So it was kind of this thing where like the community still values these generative art grails. It's just inaccessible because now on platforms like Art Blocks, it's kind of reserved for the whales. It's reserved for people that made a lot of money in the run-up of Eve. It's really great curated work, but I want others to experience the fun that I had in minting art blocks and squiggles in the early days. Of you don't know what you're gonna get. It's this randomization. It's really fun to explore and experiment this new work. I wanted to bring that experience to more and more users. And Prohibition is the generative art platform similar to Art Blocks with a few key differences. Number one is that it's open. So where Art Blocks is very curated, we are open. So anyone can mint. You can go learn P5.js or any other library or just straight JavaScript, and you can go and you can create work, use our tools to launch a collection, launch a project on Prohibition. And it's great for those that have an established career as well as those just learning and everybody in between. So it's open. It's also on an L2. Kind of going back to, the Ethereum ecosystem, there is an open platform. It's called FX Hash, but it's on Tezos. And they're doing a lot of interesting things, and I've had a lot of fun over there. But I just think the future is in the Ethereum ecosystem. The future is scaling solutions like Arbitrum. So we've decided to launch on Arbitrum. You still get the base, security and benefits of being on Ethereum, but it's really fast transactions. It's really cheap and inexpensive transaction fees. There's a lot of benefits you kind of get the best of both worlds by keeping it within the Ethereum ecosystem, but still a lot of liquidity and a lot of inexpensive transaction fees that allows for inexpensive mints. Prices of these things are generally lower because the artist doesn't have to pay a lot in gas to deploy these things. So it's been great working with the Arbitrum team, and I'm excited to launch in the Arbitrum community. And then the third thing is, I wasn't throwing shade at Art Blocks. I really think they've done an amazing job with starting off this industry. But we're going through for this other part of the market. But thankfully, we're building on top of Art Blocks tech. We're actually building on Art Blocks engine, which is, their platform, their minting generator, their smart contracts. So it's really the coming together of a lot of cool ideas, a lot of cool visions, a lot of independent concepts, and it's really fitting together nicely. And it seems to be a great timing where people are getting more and more interested in what's going on layer twos like Arbitrum. So yeah, that's the long answer. The short answer is generative art for everybody coming this summer.
Amazing. That's a good pitch. It got well oiled there towards the end. I like it.
That's how I tend to do it, is I ramble for a while and then edit down my thinking after the fact. But yeah, it's a great project. I am excited. We have over 100 artists in our artist only Discord. I think it's up to 150 artists that are curious about dropping work on Prohibition, and many who have already have already confirmed to be doing a drop. So I thought we would initially be having like a hard time, scratching and clawing, convincing artists to drop on our platform in the early days. We're doing the opposite, which is just like, hey, let's spread this out. Let's not just throw all the projects open on the first day. Let's spread this out so we can get great momentum. But we're seeing some amazing work, and again, it's just like at a different scale, at a different kind of twist. It's helping artists create, giving them the tools to deliver this amazing work, bringing them closer to artists, or bringing the artists closer to their community. and at the same time just having fun building, innovative products.
It's a huge indicator. I have an artist first compass by nature here. And anytime you have, you said 100, 150, sort of there, interested, excited, I think it's a great indicator of where something is headed. So congrats to you on where it is today, and let's keep an eye on it. And Jordan, as we broaden back out and get close to wrapping up here, broaden back out to the future of art. And I'm going to ask you two things. The first thing is something that you expect to happen. So could be short-term, mid-term, long-term, but something you very much expect. Like I expect in the future of art as it relates to, let's say, your interest, the space you occupy, I believe X will happen. And then the other side of the coin is something that you don't necessarily expect, but you hope for. In a best case scenario, I hope that X or Y becomes part of the future of art. What do you expect and what do you hope for?
I expect more and more people will become artists, quote unquote. I expect a greater percentage of the population will create art and spend portions of their day with engaging in artistic activities. When you look back in the Renaissance days, there was a big population of people that were involved in creating art, whether you're an artist or an apprentice or you participated in the trade. There wasn't TV or radio or metaverse then, so a lot of people were involved in that side of the media side of it. But I think with the tech that's going the way it is, with AI, with where we're going as a society, I think it's actually really beneficial that the more and more of these creative tools are emerging, and with the rise in AI over the next couple of years, over the next couple of decades, more and more people will take less of a quote unquote normal job and will be afforded the opportunity to create art. And many of that will be, for a living, given these tools that we're creating and these channels that we're unlocking. With tools like NFTs, more and more people will be able to will earn a living from creating art. So I expect that to happen, more and more people creating art. And I'm excited for Prohibition and the way that we are kind of putting a paintbrush in more people's hands, so to speak. What I hope that happens is, in addition to people creating it, that I can spend more and more time just enjoying and appreciating. This sounds super cheesy, but I think art and just that creative mindset is missing from a lot of people. It would be extreme for me to say it's going to solve all the world's problems, but I would really hope that this movement that's going on right now, it's cheesy with the GMs and the WAGMIs and all that, but to me it's just like the first kind of wrinkle, the first kind of fold in like this larger movement to not only appreciate art but to appreciate other people, and have this kind of vibe extend to others. And I think in the next couple of decades, as people become more and more creative, working a standard job less and less, appreciating art, appreciating each other, I would hope that rubs off on our politicians and our decision makers. And I would hope that starts to improve the way of life for people, and just how we treat other people.
Speaking of appreciating people, who should be on a future episode of the show?
Brian Brinkman, right? I know you've got an artist podcast, but he's got so many more builder qualities than just being an artist. So I think he would be great. I'm impressed with Snowfro. I'm impressed with, I'll just give you a couple names: Ben Roy, Derek Edwards, so many people in my circle that are just continue to, expand my thinking as a product builder, as someone in the space. So many great people that are like so intelligent and helping kind of foster this creativity for so many people.
I love that you went Brian Brinkman first. It makes all the sense in the world. Of the maximum respect to the other names as well. But you've given me a lot to think about in many ways. And for other people who this resonates with, where can they find Jordan Lyall?
At Jordan Lyall on Twitter. That's where I go first. There's lots of other projects and websites, but just check out Jordan Lyall, Lyall on Twitter.
Amazing, man. Listen, this has been a pleasure. I hope in a few years we're back here doing it again, talking about the next bull cycle and wherever the heck this thing goes, what you hope for, what you expect. Wish you all the best with Prohibition, Levels, everything, Venture, everything else that you're working on, man.
Thanks so much, RD. Really appreciate the time and continued support and FOMO buying that you've been doing on all my projects. So really appreciate that, man. This is a great conversation.
Let the cycle continue.
Here we go.
Thank you for listening and for being part of the future of art. If you liked what you heard, please do subscribe and drop a review on your favorite podcast platform. Onward to the many interviews that await us. The Future of Art is produced by Artifex. Artifex, Artifex, was created to honor today's top digital fine artists in 3 dimensions. Each artist's one-of-one work of art becomes a collectible 3D sculpture and centerpiece of an immersive world built in Unreal Engine, the creation tool of Epic Games. Visit at artifex_project on Instagram to experience those sculptures in AR, and visit artifex.art/unreal to literally step inside the art on your browser.